And welcome back. Now, although the banking sector strike was halted by the courts last week, experts say that it actually highlighted how automation and artificial intelligence continue to impact business and employment. The World Economic Forum estimates that digitisation could displace 75 million jobs by the year 2022 as companies will restructure labour and use machines more. And this is already putting pressure on professionals to advance their current skill set. And to discuss this matter further with us this morning, Dr Linda Meyer, Dean at Boston City Campus and Business School. Thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
So firstly, how would you describe the whole issue of digitization and automation in most companies at the moment? You know, what does it look like and what is likely to happen to that?
Companies are looking for economies of scale. So as they harvest knowledge, as we live in this digital economy, they are looking for ways to do things faster, cheaper and better. And obviously the difficulty is that it comes at the expense of labor in the workplace, and making sure that these individuals are then skilled and have a place in the workplace in the future. Because people are not really worried about jobs, they're worried about jobs for themselves in the future.
Now, this banking strike, and we saw what actually happened there. Yes, it was averted, but this is as a direct result of automation, and it's threatening jobs, and the banks are talking about retrenchment. But how is this impacting on the actual skill set, on the people that work in these sectors? Because I find it very interesting that we tend to focus on the negative aspect of it, which is job losses. Whereas if you look at a country like Switzerland, and I'm talking a lot about Switzerland this week because I was there last week, but they are actually more focused on innovation and moving forward. You hardly hear them talk about the fourth industrial revolution. They are doing, as opposed to what we are doing, theorizing and talking about the negative aspects of it.
Absolutely. And we must understand that when we look at the banking sector, for example, and we see that the imminent retrenchments that have taken place, the banks that have looked to the future, like Capitec, for example, they're creating jobs. They're not retrenching. So what are they doing? They're doing things differently. They're looking at what the customer base wants. So the problem with the large banks is they have a huge infrastructure that they need to support. So when new banks come into the sector, they don't have that huge cost of capitalizing digital banking. But what do we do about the staff that are sitting there? We can see in America, the banking sector is growing. They're not becoming less. So people that are in the banks need to be reskilled so that they can give advice in the financial services sector. The sales of insurance policies, for example. What do clients want and how do we harness and support that? It is definitely not a negative thing. But what we need to understand is that companies and government must be more accountable about ensuring that the skills for the future is available. There's something called Moore's Law. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but what it speaks about is that in the digital economy, knowledge is reproduced at a rate every 18 months, which means if you're operating a specific set of software or machinery, in 18 months you have to be reskilled and retrained. Otherwise your knowledge is redundant. And how are organizations capacitating and preparing for that? How are we in our schooling system, for example, making sure that the skills for the future, for example, the cognitive, interpretive value, the ability to adapt. And a very interesting story that we look at of one of the famous business people in America, Alvin Toffler, that said to us in 1970 already that the illiterate of the future are not going to be the people that can't read and write. It's going to be the people that can't unlearn, relearn, and acquire new skills for the future.
Because we see that, gone are the days when you would get onto one career path and stay there throughout your working life. I mean, you seem to change career paths ever so often, but quite apart from that, there is, of course, the need to be reskilled, no matter what it is that you do. So you talk about companies having to be aware of that and do that, but what about individuals? What can the individual do to make sure that your skill set is always relevant?
Individuals have a huge responsibility to ensure that their skills are current and marketable. Gone are the days where we can just sit in a position forever. For example, university professors just sitting and looking into the future. If you are not practice ready, if your skills are not current, if you are still teaching people in qualifications and degrees that your parents, the content is still exactly the same. We cannot prepare individuals for the future. So you as an individual need to take stock and accountability for the skill sets that you have. In the working genre, we see that there are 3 layers. There are the mechanized jobs, which really sit in the middle, and the automated jobs, the lower skilled jobs, and then the highly skilled jobs. And the lower skilled jobs individuals are really enabling the life of the highly skilled people. So caregiving, childminding, all of those sort of jobs that make their lives easier. Cleaners, for example. And the middle layer jobs, the automated, the drivers, the people that are in highly repetitive functions, clerical jobs, receptionists, those jobs are becoming completely redundant. So how are you constantly looking at your skill set and making sure that you are relevant to an employer, and not the first one out the door, but absolutely the last one that they want to let go?
So you spoke about this technology that, changes daily, as it were, and how you need to be keeping up with the times. Given where we are currently at as a country, as South Africa, we are lagging behind. Are there any shortcuts that we could perhaps take in order to bring us, somewhat up to speed with some of the leading nations in this regard?
So we are lagging behind in some of the industries, but in some of them we are quite advanced. And we can see in technology and innovation, we're catching up because there are good constructive mechanisms and programs being put in place by government to address these. And what we need to do, obviously, is to make sure that we look at ourselves within the global context and stop being insular, because we're not competing in a little country in Africa somewhere. We are a real player. We're the second largest economy on the African continent. But we must look to the future to see that the grade 1 students that are in school now, 65% of them will be working in jobs that we haven't even imagined yet. So how do we prepare for skill sets for the future that we don't even understand where we are going? So we need to make sure that our knowledge is constantly current, that we're looking into the future, and that we're capacitating and gearing the economy to be able to perform functions and services with highly skilled individuals. You look at some of the countries that have very little or no natural resources that are in the top 20 global players because they are knowledge production, knowledge economies. And there's no reason why we can't compete on exactly the same basis.
But we're not competing, because if you look at the level of research, for example, that is currently being done, the number of PhD students in South Africa, and you look at other countries and how attractive they make it for students to come to their countries and mine that knowledge, as it were. Why are we not doing very well in that regard? What is it that's hampering our progress?
So one of the key things that we do as South Africans are that we always chase numbers. We want to see what is the matric pass rate, how many PhDs. We produce about 2,700 PhDs per year and just under 5,000 master students. But what is the quality that we are producing? So instead of looking at saying, are the people that are coming out of grade 12 functionally literate? Are they able to perform? Do they have, we don't talk about STEM anymore, which is science and technology. We speak about whole individuals where the arts and social sciences become very important. We need to start focusing on quality and what it is that we are producing, and not just looking at numbers and think because we're reaching larger numbers and producing PhD graduates in large numbers that's going to change the economy. What contribution are we really making? How are we investing? How are we supporting? How are we supporting organizations, for example, small businesses, to create employment so that skill sets can be developed? How are we making sure that the content that we're teaching in our university is current, globally competitive, and that we're producing productive individuals and not just chasing numbers? Numbers mean absolutely nothing.
I couldn't agree with you more, because, that interface between the institutions of higher learning and, of course, on the other hand, business and government, we're not doing very well on that front. You look at other countries where business plays a pivotal role. They, in fact, in some instances, are the drivers with regard to the curriculum at higher education level, because these are the skills that need to be produced to take into the workplace. With us, we struggle with business to invest on any level, it would seem.
Indeed. So we see that in our education system, the Quality Council for Trades and Occupation is doing much better than higher education, because they have pivotal in all of the SETAs. They have employers that contribute to the curriculum and make sure that the skill set are current so that they can absorb them into the economy. When we look at university graduates, there's very little engagement with industry and asking industry, what do we need to produce for you to absorb these individuals into your workplaces? So we speak about an entrepreneurial mindset. Everybody wants everyone to be an entrepreneur. You need to be an entrepreneur with something that you can sell or knowledge that you can sell to a client. It's not something that you just wake up one day and you're an entrepreneur.
But isn't that a pivotal cog that needs to be found and rectified within the current system, Dr. Meyer?
Without a doubt, we need to revisit the entire system. So there's some positive moves. I know a lot of people are complaining about the grade 9 certificate and the exit point. But that's a great thing, because we're not compelling people to sit in academic streamlines. We're letting people start to explore real jobs that they can then be productive citizens in the economy. So this is what government, when I say that they're taking small steps in the right direction. We love to lambaste and say how bad government is and how bad our country is. We live in a great country, and there are pockets of excellence that are starting to emerge.
But it has to be done correctly, though. And we had a conversation with the unions earlier, and they said they wanted a little more detail. They wanted a little more engagement on this, because you're absolutely right again. It is the right thing to do, because not everybody's academically inclined. And if you look at what other countries do in the universities of applied sciences, you know, that they create these streams for people to go into, but it is properly regulated, and of course they do this in consultation with these institutions, and therefore nobody falls by the wayside. And if we're not going to think it through properly, then surely we're going to face more problems.
So I think we need to, you're absolutely right, we need to think about these things holistically, and also not look for a blueprint, you know, the European model. We're quick to run and copy everyone, and then the system changes, then it's changing this way, then it's changing that way, because something is working. In Germany, we see that the preferred method of education is the vocational route. We see that plumbers and electricians, even in South Africa, earn as much as medical doctors, and the saying, I'd rather be an unemployed learner than an employed plumber, rings very true. But you're right in that we need to start analyzing, looking at data, and making sure, more than anything, that industry is getting the skills that they require, and that they are critically part of all of these discussions. We cannot in isolation be looking at education. Who are the end users? What is the value proposition that as taxpayers we are investing in students that are in universities? What is the value proposition for us at the end of this? It's our tax money that is putting these graduates eventually into the workplace. And are they employable? Are they contributing positively? Are they growing the economy with the right skill sets? Or are we still training them on redundant knowledge of 20 or 30 years ago? Because that's not helpful to anyone.
But that is what we are doing currently. And as you say, there are exceptions to the rule, but by and large, we haven't cracked that code as yet. And if you look at how we approach the whole thing, it's very much a silo mentality. And how do we break that? How do we come together and maximize?
We break that cycle by a culture of accountability. To say whatever investment we are doing, that we stand up and start participating, not sit idly by and accept the graduates that are being given to us. Stand up and tell institutions that you will not take their graduates because they're not performing at the level that you require them. But engage. We cannot sit back and just hope that the system is going to change on its own. We're all accountable. We can't change by blaming politicians or blaming ministries. We are all accountable citizens, and we need to stand up and start contributing positively if we want to make a meaningful and an impactful change for the future that we all have and for our children.
So as the situation stands right now, what do we need to do as a nation, as a country, moving forward, so that we don't theorize, but we actually are a part of producing and mining knowledge?
We need to start accountability within ourselves, making sure that we have current knowledge and skill sets that we can contribute to our employers. We need employers to make sure that their employees have the required skill sets going forward, and government needs to create an enabling policy environment where employers, labour, employees, everybody has a voice, and that we start drawing on the knowledge and expertise of individuals that are locally situated, not always looking externally. Also not being insular, being open to new ideas, but we need to start pivoting on technology and innovation. We need to see where the world is going. If we don't start taking stock, we will be left behind. We don't want to be another failed story. We want to be a global player with locally relevant skills that can contribute positively to the economy of the future.
Well, thank you so much. That was Dr. Linda Meyer, Dean at Boston City Campus and Business School, talking about how automation will inevitably impact on jobs in the future and what all of us need to do in order to stay abreast.